Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to my channel. My name's Elliot and today we're looking at the 2022 Formula 1 season. The new 2022 cars. Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that there's some new 2022 Formula 1 regulations and I'm looking forward to them. I think from all the noises that we're hearing from Ross Brawn, these regulations are going to be really prescriptive and watertight, and I think we're unlikely to see a 2009 Brawn or a 2014 Mercedes style domination. Although Brawn only dominated the beginning of the season, they didn't win a race after like race 6, but Mercedes definitely dominated. It's looking like we're going to be unlikely to see that kind of massive domination, although I think a team definitely could. I'm almost predicting that I think there will be one team that will absolutely nail it and will have a bit of a jump on the rest of the field. Typically what happens towards the end of regulations is, and as we saw in 2021, is that the field gets quite a lot closer and they start to converge on the same solutions. Now I know Red Bull and Mercedes had a high rake and a low rake philosophy, but the amount of performance that you can extract out of the car diminishes as the regulations go on. So I mean, I know we've had the same regulations since 2017. I know they've been modified slightly, particularly for the 2021 season, but the whole field got really close together and it created really great racing despite the cars being really difficult to overtake. I'm sure I heard that on some tracks you need like a 1.5 or even a 2-second time delta difference to overtake, and hopefully these new regulations will combat that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a bit of a bigger field spread and unfortunately potentially not as quite close racing in the 2022 season. But the new cars, they look good, they look modern, they look strange, and I think that's always the case with new regulations. I think it takes a bit of time to get used to the look of it, but I didn't think I'd get used to the halo. I think I thought it'd always look like a flip-flop, but it's amazing how quickly you get used to that. And obviously I'm glad it's there because it's definitely saved lives now. I don't think anyone would argue against having the halo. Will I make a prediction? Yeah, I might make a prediction towards the end, but I'll probably come to regret that. But I might save that for another video. Let's see. Will Lewis Hamilton retire? As of today, as of me recording this, Lewis Hamilton still media silent. He's not made any sort of statement, and Mercedes haven't made a statement on Lewis. Straight after the end of the season, certainly in his post-race interview with Jenson Button, I felt like, ooh, the noises he was making, he was dodging the questions about next season. I thought, oh, okay, could actually retire here. But if I think about the hunger that he had in certainly last season, and he seems to show, I'd be really surprised if he wasn't back on the grid next year. It's a risk for Lewis because he's won a race in every season he's ever competed. There's no reason why Mercedes couldn't make a real mess up of these regulations and be the 3rd or 4th quickest car, and he doesn't win a race, and you know, would he then want to stay on the grid for 2023? It would be a shame for him. He wants to end it on top, and he really did end the 2021 season on top, and I'm not saying he deserved it more over Max Verstappen, but I think they both deserved it, and I don't think anyone would say that Lewis didn't deserve that win in Abu Dhabi. But does he want to go out, make 2022 his last season and be in the 3rd, 4th quickest car? I think that would be disappointing for him and for his legacy, I guess. If Lewis does retire, who do I think could replace him? Valtteri Bottas is an option. I would be really surprised if he came back. I think that ship sailed, and it would be weird. I mean, if you look on Mercedes social media, they've made a right meal out of Valtteri Bottas leaving. They've posted a lot. It's been a pretty long and drawn out farewell. I'd be really surprised if they took him back. Another option is Esteban Ocon. He was a young driver, Mercedes young driver, and I'm not sure if he is managed by Toto Wolff, but I think he actually had a really good season last year for Alpine. He looked really good last season, and he's definitely a strong option. I think having George and Esteban in the car would be a pretty strong, pretty youthful lineup. You would be lacking some, I say lacking experience. They've both had a good few seasons in F1 now, so maybe not, but I think he would be a good fit. Some other options are Stoffel Van Dorn. He's currently driving in Formula E I think I'm right in saying he was also a Mercedes young driver, or he certainly had some Mercedes connections. He's currently driving for Mercedes in Formula E. He didn't really get much chance in F1. He drove for McLaren in the Honda years, not the good Honda years of the 80s and 90s, but of the early 2010s. And he was up against Fernando as well, who really beat him kind of comprehensively. But I think he showed promise in his first season and maybe didn't get the chance he deserved in F1. If I had to sort of not sit on the fence, I'd probably say that Lewis Hamilton will be driving on the 2022 grid next year. Stewarding. I don't think you can talk about the 2022 season without talking about the stewarding and looking back at the 2021 season at just how bad the stewarding was last year. I think everyone, whether you're a Max, Lewis, or other fan, or even just neutral, anyone would agree that the stewarding needs to be improved. It's not good enough to have all this ambiguity and in track limits and knowing if you're going to get a penalty for an overtake or a specific defense of an overtake. It seems to chop and change for each corner, for the same corner throughout the race and throughout the race weekend. To be honest, if I'm going to focus on the championship battle from last year, I feel for Max and for Lewis, because Max felt like he got the green light after Brazil turn 4 that he could run Lewis off the track. I don't think that was right, but that was the decision that seemed to be made. A couple of races later, he's then being penalised every time he's running Lewis off or he runs off the road. And how can anyone drive and make decisions when they're driving with all this ambiguity? And the track limits is just ridiculous. I don't understand why we can't just make the white line of the track limit and be done with it, because it seems to be changing throughout the weekend. And at the beginning of the weekend it's not being policed, then it's the curb, and then it's the white line, and it's changing throughout the course of the weekend. I think last year in Bahrain it changed during the race. I think Lewis, and rightly so, was going wide because there were no track limits there. And then when Max started going wide and the Red Bull team started to call it out, track limits got enforced. And it's just ridiculous. I don't understand why other sports like football have goal line technology, tennis have Hawkeye, why we can't on the key lines and the key corners or run-off areas can't stick cameras there and start to police this down to the millimetre or fractions of a millimetre. I mean, this is meant to be a high-tech sport, and it is a high-tech sport. Why can't we stick cameras, high definition, high frame rate cameras or tracking equipment to track these lines so that it should be black or white? I don't understand why we've got all this ambiguity. It just makes it painful to watch as a fan, for driver, for teams, just everyone involved. And it would make Michael Massey's life and the steward's life easier if it's just clear and written out and the same at every race, and we can stop talking about it like I am now. At the end of the 21 season, I was very much in the camp of get Michael Massey out. I think he was really the face of all the bad decisions. Rightly or wrongly, I don't know. I think I've since calmed down a bit, and maybe it wouldn't cool to have him lose his job, but I think he needs more support and he needs more funding in the stewarding department. I think we need consistent stewards at every race. I don't know why he feels it's a good idea to have different stewards at different races. You're just not going to get continuity there. Racing drivers, they see racing incidents differently. Everyone has a different driving style, and I think you need to get a good mix of driving styles and consistent in the stewarding room. And I don't know whether Michael Massey is in control of that or not, but if he is, then he should definitely put something in place and have the funding to have a few more people in race control with him to really filter out some of the noise that he's getting, so he can make clear decisions. I mean, it's a high pressure environment and always will be, but can start making better decisions with less distractions. COVID impact. So we currently have 23 races of the Formula 1 season 2022, which is a record. Do I think we're going to see 23 races? Maybe, but I think probably not. We should probably expect some disruption and the calendar to change. The last couple of seasons have been affected, and the pandemic doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, and You know, we're going to places like Australia and Canada where we've not had a race for a couple of seasons and with tighter COVID restrictions, and I think we should expect to have the calendar disrupted, and I would be surprised if we saw a full 23 race calendar. Maybe we could have a couple of races at the same track again. You know, Bahrain seems to be a good place for that. That outer track seemed to throw up quite an interesting race. So if F1 is keen to see a full 23 race calendar, then maybe we will have to look at that again. I hope COVID doesn't affect the season too much, and thankfully last year it didn't affect the championship. I know Mazepin at the last race came down with COVID, but it didn't affect the championship protagonists. It did affect Lewis in 2020, but the championship had already been wrapped up by that point and didn't play a factor, and thankfully it didn't play a factor last season. And I think everyone involved in Formula One will have their fingers crossed that it doesn't affect this season as well. Predictions for the season. I probably shouldn't make a prediction because I'm probably going to get it horrendously wrong. I might make a full video on this, but I'm going to just make a few predictions. In terms of a general pecking order, I don't think you will see a different three teams at the front of the grid. I think it will be Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari, but I actually don't think it will be in that order. And sorry, Red Bull fans, but I think Red Bull will probably be the third of those top three teams. Typically, and actually in 2021 they broke this trend, but typically they've had quite a slow start to the season, and I think they put a lot into the 2021 season, certainly more than Ferrari and Mercedes did, and I think that's actually going to really hamper them, certainly at the beginning of the season, but it might affect them for the whole season. They seem to put everything into last year, and I'd be surprised if they didn't maybe get off to a slower start. I think Ferrari, I think they're going to be strong. I think they've probably still got the third best engine on the grid, and for that reason I don't think they will be the fastest team, but they've got two great drivers. And for the 2021 season they had an old nose and really wanted to change it, and I think that hampered them. So a fresh start will definitely do them good, but maybe no surprise and not very adventurous from me. I think Mercedes will probably be the quickest team next year. They seem to have the best engine. They've consistently reacted really well to the most recent rule changes, spec changes, and I can't see that being any different this season. Now, that does remain to be seen that, you know, a team could find a loophole. I know that the 2022 regs are really prescriptive, but there will also be loopholes there. Maybe not a 2009 style double diffuser, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team finds something or nails the regulations so well that they do make quite a big jump up the field. But Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull are the best teams placed to do the best with the new regulations. I think the midfield is going to be really competitive. I'm probably not going to predict the order of those in this video. If I make a quick prediction about the final places on the grid, I feel good about Haas actually. I think they made a bold decision to not do anything to their 2021 car, and I do think they'll be in the bottom half of the grid, but I think they'll move up from plumb last to, yeah, they'll be moving up. I find it hard to see Williams and Alfa Romeo doing well. I think they'll probably be the final two teams on the grid. Maybe not too adventurous from me again, because they are at the back of the grid, or they were at the back of the grid for the 2021 season. I think the Ferrari engine's probably the third or fourth best engine on the grid, and I think Alfa Romeo will suffer. And I would like to be proved wrong with Williams, but I don't think they have a really strong lineup. I do rate Alex Albon, Latifi. He was up against George Russell, who's really highly rated, and I've got my fingers crossed that he'll actually have a good season. He's quite well embedded within the team now, and he'll have that advantage over Alex Albon. I think Alex Albon's got pretty good stock on the grid. I think everyone rates him pretty well, so I think if Nicholas Latifi does well, that will certainly be good for him and his career. But it seems like a weaker lineup, and Williams has struggled with funding in the past, and I struggle to see them further up the grid, to be honest. Cool. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video.